Hey, it's Sam, and I'm making this video about the new moon that happens in Pisces on Monday, March 27th. Looking at the chart over here. This new moon is beginning 30 days of the Pisces lesson, which has to do with creativity, metaphysics, surrendering to the great cosmic stew. There's a lot of potential for escapism and bypassing and like, it'll all take care of itself, which, you know, we tend to fall into anyway when we're in situations that we can't control or that feel bigger than us. This is a quality of Pisces that we need to understand. It's really the sign where we need to develop the recognition that we have no control over the world. And it's not a fearful kind of thing. We also notice this in Scorpio, where things get taken from us, especially with other people, and our fears are stimulated and we get stressed out and we get all worked up because we can't control things. So we try to with Scorpio, and it creates a lot of pressure. Pisces, we don't try to. And by the way, this whole loss of control, letting go, is what those concepts of water are related to. And there's a correlation to the moksha houses in the astrology chart. One of the main things we have to learn is to let go, and to trust, and to surrender, and to float. And Pisces is really the sign of floating in that cosmic sea. Now, we can be too passive and just kind of lack direction. This is the problem with Pisces, and it's the problem with when we lack a focus and lack a direction. So why it's important for Pisces to move forward, or in Pisces times, we need to keep moving forward. Like a fish always needs to be moving forward, or else they die. Which is not just me being poetic, it's actually true. The gills the gills need to be oxygenated through the motion of the water. This is why even when they're sitting still, their gills are moving, right? Moving water. So we tend to want to just go, heck with it, and get into things like apathy. You know, being apathetic is not the same as being surrendered. Apathy and surrender can tend to look the same. Surrender is a conscious thing where we consciously say, okay, it's not anathema to action. In fact, we're supposed to perform our actions in the spirit of surrender. That's yoga. By the way, that is yoga. That's the definition of yoga. To perform our actions, but to not be attached, but to be surrendered to the fruits of those labors. So act with full commitment, like Arjuna on the battlefield in the Bhagavad Gita. This is why that is used, because Krishna says, kill him. But with detachment, as if you're just an actor in a drama. Basically the biggest test we could ever have. Kill everyone you love. Kill all your relatives. But don't get upset about it. But don't act like it's any big deal. Because he who dies, or he who thinks he is born, or he who thinks he dies, is mistaken. Just like the body changes clothes at the beginning of each lifetime, the soul changes bodies. So fight, Arjuna. Do your duty, but with detachment. Realize you're not the doer. Let me be the doer. Me meaning God. Me meaning that inner deity that exists in all of us. Now, this is not saying we should go out and kill people. This was a sacred battle, and that was his duty. And it's a lesson on surrender to God. And in that story, it's used as the most sort of extreme situation you could imagine. We're not usually in those situations. We're all attached to everything. It's about attachment. And Pisces is about surrender. And so the opposite of Pisces is Virgo, where we have a lot of attachment to our actions and where we worry about every little action in the world. We can learn a lot about the opposite sign. And we can learn a lot about Pisces by looking at Virgo to see where we have to complete the circle, to complete the cycle. And again, so Pisces is where we're naturally surrendered, but we might be apathetic, escaping from all of the work and details of the world because we can't manage them. Well, again, all the details and managing them and organizing them is Virgo. So we need to bring those two together. That's a lot of what's happening in this new moon. Now, we've been running a lot of Pisces energy lately because Venus has been there since, when was it? The end of January. Right? And it's been retrograde since March 3rd. I do remember that. So since March 3rd, Venus has been retrograde. So we've been dealing with a lot of Pisces energy. Mercury was there. The Sun is now there. In addition, we have Jupiter retrograde. Jupiter, the ruler of Pisces, has been retrograde in Virgo, aspecting. So we're running a lot of this kind of apathy, surrender, escapism, and also, because the ruler of Pisces is in Virgo, understanding the need to not space out, understanding the need to not bypass the difficulty. I've noticed a lot of spiritual bypassing these days. What I mean by spiritual bypassing is not showing up to be engaged. In particular, because Mars is in Aries, there's a lot of grievances going on. There's a big difference, there's a big struggle going on between, especially Venus and Mars, and you might see it in relationships now. In your relationships, they could be pretty contentious because Venus is exalted in Pisces and retrograde, and again, kind of wanting to just escape from engagement, especially because Mars is in Aries, saying, yeah, screw them. Right? They both have a kind of, the work of not just relationships, but dealing with other people and all of that stuff that it takes to stay connected. Both that strong Mars, which breaks connection, and that retrograde Venus in Pisces, also Mercury was just there, the Sun is there. There's a lot of that escapism to just want to go, well, you know, and to just bring a big philosophy around it. And say, well, you know, we tried and it's just not going to work, and I'm just going to go surrender and float off and escape from all of that into my beautiful fantasy of what I deserved and what I didn't get, and how, you know, I really had nothing to do with it. It's really just that I'm so misunderstood, and all of this bypassing that we can do with Pisces stuff. Pisces is very much about bypassing all the unpleasantness of the world in its negative. This is why you always have to be vigilant to making, well, this is one of the good ones, and this is one of the bad ones. Neither good nor bad. Pisces is great for escaping and, you know, into something, but what are we escaping into? What are we escaping from? Is it a healthy escape, like through meditation, spiritual surrender, you know, through the heart, through compassion? Or is it escaping through some chemical or some other thing or some fantasy? Because it's hard to stay engaged in the world. Again, Virgo is where we're engaged in the world. The opposite. Usually Virgos, I should say Virgos, but that Virgo energy doesn't escape. For instance, if there's a thing going on with another person, Virgo will be right there saying, well, you said this, you said that. It can be kind of the opposite. They need to escape a little bit more and kind of get less of that nitpicky behavior and less of that bean counting behavior, but they show up. They show up to say, let's work it out, and you work it out. So again, there can certainly be a tendency more toward the escapist part now particularly also the ruler of Pisces, Jupiter, is retrograde, right? Which is also wanting to just like, tune it out. So you want to notice this energy right now that's running, and this sort of struggle between staying engaged and sort of tuning out. And particularly, again, because Mars is in Aries, which is pretty fired up already. And when Mars goes in Aries, it's certainly tempting to break connection anyway, regardless of anything else that's happening. Mars going through Aries is a transit of breaking up in relationships. I've been looking at it for years. Mars and fire signs in general. You can see why. It's about, now I want to feel powerful again, whatever it is. In relationships is where we tend to not feel powerful. So you want to watch that anyway. So this new moon is in Uttara Bhadrapada, which means later auspicious result or auspicious foot. The symbol has to do with literally a funeral cot, like a bed, like a like a deathbed, you might say. Pretty stark image, but it's where we see the result, like the last result, later result, last result of our life. This is where the solar system is culminating. Let me just look at something here. This is where the solar system is culminating and finishing, because it's Pisces, then starts over in Aries. There's only one more nakshatra after Uttara Bhadrapada, and that's Revati. But this one, Uttara Bhadrapada, is like where we can really feel that finality of life. The deity is called Aja Ekapad. It's called Ahibunya. They're invoked together. They're the Purva and the Uttara Bhadrapada. Ahibunya is the celestial serpent. It's one of the serpent energies. And serpents have to do with, creatures that are, of course, very long and thin and can go deep down into holes. They have poison. They can be like these poisonous sort of tendrils or tentacles in our mind that go deep down into these poisonous parts of our mind. It can also be that powerful energy that goes down and extracts the poison. Of course, they're related to Lord Shiva. He's got serpents around his neck and whatnot. They're kind of otherworldly figures and related to transforming the poison into power and the elixir. These stories of Lord Shiva drinking poison from the famous Sundara Manthan story where they churn the milk ocean. And so there's a lot of this extracting the poison from the mind that's necessary for your final liberation and that final death of the ego. All symbols of death aren't necessarily physical death. It's death of cycles, death of everything. This is the last zodiac sign, Pisces, which is a culmination of the previous 12, and where we tend to feel kind of at the mercy of all of that energy that came before. This is why planets in Pisces sense that culmination of that there's only so much power we have, because something in Pisces is experienced in that regard. They're finishing a cycle. So a lot of the finishing of that cycle is reconciling the serpent energy. It's also related to what are called the Rudras, who are the attendants of Shiva. They also have to do with rays of the sun. Rays of the sun are often referred to also as serpents. So this allows you to really penetrate into the depth of your mind and psyche and transform that poison into a great elixir, so that you're not just poisoned by your toxic attachments and all of that other stuff, because the serpent will bite you. And one of the ways the serpent bites you in Pisces, as you can imagine, is by a sort of drug. Again, look at the tendency, drugs that we escape into, and we escape into this fantasy. You can see how that's a serpent, kind of something biting you. It's like, it's gonna die, everything is so messed up, we're all gonna die, and we just want to escape from that. Or, this whole nature, this whole notion of the death of the ego. But that's what something like drugs are. When you take drugs or even get drunk, what it's doing is it's lowering your inhibitions. It's actually unburdening you from the pressure of the ego for a short amount of time. It's like a death. When you take drugs, it's because you're looking for a transformative kind of psychedelic experience, which very much about serpents. Serpent energy has a lot to do with that. Also, it's related to the Kundalini, which is trying to awaken hidden mystical power, but the serpent can bite you if you're not careful. So, very important concepts for this new moon in Pisces, and it'll set off a trajectory of 30 days where we face our higher metaphysical joy, tend to escape from the world because of the pain of those things we can't control and those relationships that we can't hold on to. This is one of the pains of Pisces, is no matter what we do, we realize it's like water flowing through our fingers. We have this romance with life. We try to hold on to some relationship or something, and no matter what, we can't. At least on a spiritual cosmic, in the spiritual cosmic dimension, there's a thing, souls don't mate, only karmas do. So when we start interacting with each other, it's through karma that we're interacting. Our karmas, their karmas, even though we might love them on the transcendent plane, the karmas are always grinding against each other. We just want to escape from that. It's one reason Venus is exalted in Pisces, because we stop placing so many conditions on others and on our happiness, but it's also the pain of Venus exalted in Pisces. Many times the exalted placements are painful. They demand a transformation, and it's a painful transformation because it's the death of our expectation that the world's going to make us happy. This is why when exalted planets are just judged, well, I thought it was good, it was terrible. Well, this is why. I'm going to do a thing on exalted planets here soon, because I'm seeing so much of this since Venus has been exalted, so much like bad astrology. If you want to know what this means for your sign, you can check out my member site for only 50 cents. I do a forecast for all 12 signs, including yours, and it will show where Pisces falls in your chart, how this tendency for escapism and creativity, and how this thing impacts you. Each sign is different. Like for Virgo, it's their 7th house, so they look for that in their partner. Gemini. For Gemini, it's 10th house. Gemini, that's why they love a career that's creative, where they can kind of flow with a lot of different things. For Scorpio, it's their 5th house, which is also very creative because the 5th house is the house of creativity. For Leo, it's the 8th house, which is change, transformation, things they can't control. So for each of these signs, this cycle, whatever your sign is, this cycle is frankly totally different. And this is how I use astrology. This is how I basically pay attention to astrology throughout the year. I don't look at my chart all the time. I know where the planets are generally, but I notice the lunation cycles, what are new moons, what are full moons. When there's about to be a lunation cycle, I look and see where it is. So, as I said, for me as Gemini, I just finished up a 9th house transit. It's finishing a 9th house transit because it was in Aquarius. Now it's going to a 10th house, which is how the 9th house becomes the 10th house. How teachings and higher purpose becomes duties, responsibilities, and being willing to handle the pressure. Then there's a 30 days of that. Then it goes to the 11th house, which is what we do with that. I just did a big series on the houses. This is how this works together. I have people that are on my member site that stay for years because they want to stay up on these cycles and see what they're working on at any given time. We have the sun cycle, which is when sun and moon come together, which starts the cycle, and then the halfway point is the full moon. The halfway point in the cycle shows where we try to harmonize it. So 2 weeks from the 27th, there will be that Virgo cycle. This is why I talk about the opposite so much, because we start with sun and moon both in Pisces, where it's like, okay, now we're totally Pisces. sun and moon, which is mind and spirit, are aligned with Pisces energy at the beginning. Then the moon moves away, and then 15 days later, spirit is still in Pisces, but mind is now in Virgo, trying to balance it, trying to harmonize it, trying to connect it with the heart, trying to connect spirit and heart. This is why full moons bring a lot of tension, because we were focused on this lesson, but then we need to integrate the opposite in order to complete the lesson. So this is really the way I recommend people use astrology in their day-to-day life. And again, I mean, it's how I use it, so I'm not recommending something I don't use. And frankly, people should stop obsessing over their chart and start paying attention to this. Knowing where their planets are in their chart, noticing it, but notice this. If you want to know how to live your life, know what dashas you're in and all that, yeah. But you'll see how this fits into all of that amazingly. So anyway, besides that, help you understand how these cycles work. And if you want to see how this works with your chart, go ahead and look at it for only 50 cents. You also get daily forecasts. I publish a forecast every day that you also get for 2 weeks. And then if you want to stay a member, you can do that later. But either way, I hope this Pisces 2017 cycle is a good one for you.